Good morning. Today we are discussing about post precipitation. See, in the last class we had seen this co-precipitation, that is precipitation along with the precipitation or the along with the wanted precipitate we will be getting an impurity, isn't it? An impurity will also be precipitated along with the wanted precipitate or the needed precipitate. See here, in the case of post precipitation, see, some impurities will be precipitated after the precipitation, that is after the primary precipitation or after the main precipitation. Some impurities will also precipitate after that precipitation. Okay, that is what is called as post precipitation, that is meant by post. Okay, so post precipitation. And also, say for example, when oxalic acid is added to calcium, H2C2O4 oxalic acid, when it is added to calcium, the precipitate obtained is calcium oxalate, CaC2O4. So this is the primary precipitate, that is what we need. Okay, calcium oxalate is the primary precipitate that we need. So if some magnesium ions are present along with this calcium, what happens is that this magnesium will be precipitating with oxalic acid to form magnesium oxalate, MgC2O4. Okay, so what happens is that after the precipitation of calcium oxalate, this magnesium oxalate will also be precipitated. Okay, so here the impurity is magnesium oxalate. Okay, impurity is the magnesium oxalate. So what happens is that while we are taking the weight of this calcium oxalate, we need only calcium oxalate or the amount of calcium present in that particular solution, or we are estimating this Ca2 plus ions. So what happens then is that along with this calcium oxalate, we will be taking the weight of magnesium oxalate also. Okay, so what happens is that the value or the weight or the estimation value will becomes wrong or will go wrong. Okay, calcium, the weight of this magnesium oxalate will also be added along with this calcium oxalate. So there occurs some error value here due to, and the error, it is due to post precipitation. Okay. So we have to avoid this post precipitation also while doing a chemical reaction. Okay, otherwise it will affect our values. And also usually this post precipitation, it will be increasing even after the completion of precipitate. That is, post precipitation increases with time. Okay, post precipitation increases with time, that is when the mother liquor, when it is in contact with the precipitate, what happens is that the post precipitation will also increases. That means the amount of impurity will also increase with time. Okay, so as soon as the precipitation is complete, we have to separate the precipitate from the mother liquor, otherwise this post precipitation will occur. And also, but in the case of co-precipitation, this decreases with time. Co-precipitation decreases with time. At the same time, post-precipitation increases with time. At the same time, co-precipitation decreases with time. Okay. Then the next is prevention of post-precipitation. Prevention of post precipitation. See, some methods can be used in order to prevent this post precipitation. For example, the first point is that if some finely divided solid substance like glass or silica gel, etc. are added, we can prevent or we can reduce the post precipitation. We can reduce post precipitation. Finely divided silica gel or glass, if it is added, post precipitation can be avoided. say for example the post precipitation of zinc sulfide on copper sulfide, that is while we are reacting this H2S with copper, if zinc ions are present in that solution, this zinc will also get precipitated as zinc sulfide. So this the precipitation or the post precipitation of zinc sulfide can be reduced by adding aluminium 3 plus ions. If aluminium 3 plus ions are present in that solution, this precipitation or the post precipitation of zinc sulfide can be reduced. Post precipitation of zinc sulfide can be reduced. So this is another method, one method. Then the second one, if we are controlling the pH, post precipitation can be reduced. We are controlling the pH or the pH balance of that particular system. If it is maintained at a particular value, if then we can avoid this or prevent this post precipitation. Then the third one, see, suppose an impurity or an impure ion or some foreign ion is present in that particular solution. So in order to avoid that from precipitating in that particular solution, we can use some complexing agents or some complexation reactions can be carried out. Okay, so what happens is that the impurity ion may get complexed with that particular ligand, and so the remaining solution, the needed metal will be present, and that metal will be reacting with that particular precipitating agent, so that we will be obtaining a precipitate. So the impurity metal or impurity metal, we can complex it with some other ligands. That is the third method of prevention. So these are the three methods. The first one, finely divided silica gel or glass by the addition of finely divided silica gel or glass. Then second one, by controlling the pH, and third one by complexing the impurity ions. Okay. Then the next is effect of digestion, or what do you mean by digestion? Digestion. See, the process of digestion means, suppose we are doing a chemical reaction and we got a precipitate. Okay, see here in this particular system, we are doing a chemical reaction and we got some precipitates. So what happens is that in this process of digestion, we have to keep this solution or this system at a particular temperature. Okay, sometimes it might be at room temperature or some higher temperatures, room temperatures or high temperatures, and also we have to keep it, or we have to keep, stand it for several hours. So what happens is that by keeping them undisturbed, so what happens is that the precipitate, more amount of precipitate will be formed, or the precipitate will grow as time goes on. Okay, as time, sometimes some reactions after we are preparing the precipitate, we have to kept it for overnight or for 8 hours or so. So what happens there is that the reaction will be going on till that time, and the precipitate, the size of the precipitate will be increased due to further addition or further adsorption. So the size of the precipitate will becomes larger. Okay. So that is the process called as digestion. So digestion means it is the process of allowing the precipitate to stand for several hours. Sometimes it may take some 8 or 12 hours, sometimes one overnight, or sometimes several days, like that. Okay, so we have to stand this, or we have to allow the precipitate to stand for several hours, either at room temperature or at some higher temperatures. Then some of the advantages of this digestion process. Advantages of digestion. See here, the first point is that it promotes the formation of a precipitate. That is, more amount of precipitate will be formed after keeping it for several hours. And also this precipitate, it can easily be separated through the process called as filtration. We are just filtering the precipitate. So the formation of a precipitate is enhanced by this digestion process. And also the second advantage is that, see, during the precipitate formation, sometimes smaller particles of precipitate will be formed. Okay, smaller particles of the precipitate will be formed. See, while keeping it for several hours, what happens is that the precipitate will be growing, or the particle size will be increasing. So, larger particles are formed. Larger particles are formed while keeping it for several hours. And also, sometimes impurities might be present in that. So, sometimes these this surface adsorption, or the larger particles, or the increase in the size of the precipitate, what happens is that the impurities may not get adsorbed on the surface of the precipitate. It prevents the adsorption of impurities from getting inside into these particles. Okay, or it prevents the adsorption of impurities from getting inside these particles or this precipitate. So that means this digestion, it helps to prevent co-precipitation. It helps to prevent co-precipitation. That means the addition or the adsorption of impurities on the surface of the precipitate, it will be prevented due to this process called as digestion. Then the next case is the case of crystalline precipitates. Usually this crystalline precipitates, it will be kept overnight. Crystalline precipitates will be kept overnight usually. And for some cases, if the precipitates are not so soluble in hot water, we will be using hot water for the this hot solution for this digestion. Sometimes it is the solution is kept hot, okay, so that the impurities may not be get occluded inside the pockets of the precipitate. And also, see, in the case of amorphous or gelatinous precipitate, digestion has no effect. In the case of amorphous or gelatinous precipitate, this digestion has no effect. Digestion has no effect. So these are some of the advantages of digestion. Then the next point, that is the washing of the precipitate. Washing of the precipitate. See, after the precipitate formation and also after the digestion process, we will be washing the precipitate. And see here, the washing means the removal of impurities is done by washing. Removal of impurities is carried out during the process of washing. Okay, see here, this precipitate may sometimes it will be adsorbed in the surface by some other impurities. Okay, see, suppose this is the precipitate. Sometimes some impurities might get adsorbed on the surface of this precipitate. So by washing this precipitate, see here, after precipitation we will be filtering through a filter paper using a funnel. Okay, so this is the funnel, and we will be filtering the precipitate. So this is the conical flask, and we will be filtering the precipitate. See here, in this funnel we will be keeping a filter paper. Okay, a filter paper is kept here, and also we will be passing the precipitate or the precipitate solution through this precipitate along with the solution through this filter paper. So this the solution, the mother liquor will be filtered, and the precipitate will be there in this filter paper. So this precipitate, it is washed several times. Sometimes this precipitate might be adsorbed by some impurities and we have to remove that impurities. By simply washing, we can remove so many impurities adsorbed on the surface of the precipitate. So that is the process called as washing. So washing can be done by, normally washing is done by water. Okay, washing using water, using pure water several times. That is, in this case, by washing means, see, small amount of, by adding small amount of water and several times, that will be the most effective method. Okay, by using small amount of water and by washing several times, some 4 or 5 times we will be washing the precipitate. And also it is desirable to wash like that, that is using small amount of water several times, not using large amount of water 1 or 2 times. It is not advisable. It's advisable to use small amount of water several times. That will be more effective than the other case. Okay, so by washing, the adsorbed ions will be removed. And also for washing process, sometimes some hot solutions, hot water may be used. Hot water may be used for washing the solution. If the soluble is, if the precipitate is insoluble, we will be using hot water for removing, for easily removing and also for easy filtering. Okay. And also sometimes some electrolytic solutions might also be used for this washing purpose. Some electrolytic solutions may be used for washing the washing this precipitate. Sometimes the adsorbed impurities might be removed by using the might easily be removed by using this electrolytic solutions. Okay, so this is about the washing of the precipitate. Then the next heading, that is the types of wash solution. Types of wash solution. See, mainly 3 types of wash solutions are present. The first one, that is the solution which prevent the precipitate becoming colloidal. See, while using the wash solution, we should be careful, and depending upon the nature of the precipitate, we will be using the wash solution. So the first type of wash solution is that the solution which prevents the precipitate becoming colloidal. Sometimes if we are using a particular wash solution and if the precipitate, if it gets colloidal or if it gets gelatinous, what happens? It might affect our value, okay, our estimation value. So in order to avoid that, we should be using some solutions which prevents the precipitate becoming colloidal. And also in the case of gelatinous precipitates, gelatinous precipitate means it will be some gel type. Okay, in the case of gelatinous precipitates, salt of ammonium salts were used for this washing purpose. In the case of gelatinous precipitate, ammonium salts were used for the washing purposes. That is the first category, solutions which prevent the precipitate becoming colloidal. Then the second case, solutions which reduce the solubility of the precipitate. Solutions which reduce the solubility of the precipitate. See here, suppose in the precipitate, for washing the precipitate, suppose we are using a particular solution, and sometimes if the precipitate is get dissolved in that particular wash solution, what happens? We will be losing some of the precipitates, isn't it? Or some of the precipitates will be washed away, or it will be dissolving in that particular wash solution, and we will be getting an error value, or the weight of the precipitate will be decreased. So while using the wash solution, we should be careful about the solubility of the wash solution. Okay, so if the wash solution has a common ion with that of the precipitate, then it will be reducing the solubility. Okay, if the wash solution has got a common ion, if the wash solution, while comparing the wash solution and the precipitate, if both of them has got a common ion, then what happens? It will be reducing the solubility, reduces the solubility. So that is another type of wash solution. So if a common ion is present in both, in wash solution and precipitate, then we can use that solution as a wash solution, so that it decreases the solubility of the solution. Say for example, in the case of calcium oxalate precipitate, see we are using dilute ammonium oxalate, NH4 twice C2O4, ammonium oxalate solution as the wash solution. Dilute ammonium oxalate as the wash solution. See here, in both the cases, which one is the common ion present? Oxalate is the common anion present. So what happens is that due to the presence of this oxalate ion, it decreases the solubility. Okay, so this is the second category, solutions which reduce the solubility of the precipitate. Then the third one, the third type of wash solution is that the solutions which prevent the hydrolysis, solutions which prevent the hydrolysis of salts of weak acids and weak bases. Solutions which prevent the hydrolysis of the salt of weak acids and weak bases. See, normally weak acids and weak bases, they will be hydrolyzing easily, isn't it? Hydrolysis means, say for example, it will be reacting with water, isn't it? It will be reacting with water to give back the corresponding acid or alkali, acid and alkali. Okay. So, in order to, sometimes the wash solution which will be helping to prevent the hydrolysis will be used. Say for example, magnesium ammonium phosphate, MgNH4PO4. This is magnesium ammonium phosphate. It will be hydrolyzing, or in water it will be hydrolyzing to give HPO4 2 minus plus OH minus. Okay, it will be hydrolyzing to HPO4 2 minus and OH minus. So here, the wash solution used is magnesium ammonium phosphate, and this it is a weak base. It is a weak base, and also such type of solution, it will be preventing the hydrolysis. Okay, so magnesium ammonium phosphate, it hydrolyzes to give HPO4 2 minus and OH minus. So in the case of weak acids or weak base, it will have the tendency to hydrolyze. So in order to prevent hydrolysis, some type of wash solutions might be used. That is the third category. Okay. Then the next topic, that is the drying and ignition of the precipitate. Drying and ignition of precipitate. See here, drying and ignition means the process, it is called as incineration. This drying and ignition, it is otherwise called as incineration. See here, we after the precipitate formation, we have filtered it and washed, isn't it? These two processes had already done. So after this filtering and washing, we have to dry it and ignite it. Okay, so drying means, see, even after washing, what happens? Some water molecules may be attached to the surface of the precipitate, or the precipitate will be wet, isn't it? So in order to dry that, after that we have to, so in order to uh, remove the water molecule present on the surface of this precipitate or present on the precipitate, we have to dry that precipitate. So a constant drying, that means we have to dry that precipitate, and in order to for this drying, or after this drying, we will be getting a precipitate with a stable composition. The precipitate will be stable and it will be having a definite composition. After drying, the precipitate will be stable. After drying and ignition, we will be getting a stable and definite composition precipitate. Okay, so we have to dry that particular precipitate at a very high temperature. Usually for this drying, we will be using crucibles. For drying, we will be using crucibles, and the peculiarity of this crucible is that it can withstand very high temperature. It's not like just our glass beakers or like that, glass beakers or test tubes or like that, or conical flask. It can withstand very high temperature. That is why we are using this crucibles. Okay, so with the help of crucibles, we will be drying and igniting the precipitate. By ignition means, see, the precipitate is along with the filter paper also, isn't it? Along with the filter paper, precipitate plus filter paper is there, and so we have to dry it and ignite it. And for drying, sometimes we might be using an oven. And after the drying, we will be igniting the precipitate in a non-luminous flame. Igniting the precipitate in a non-luminous flame. Non-luminous flame means that we are using a Bunsen burner. So we are igniting the precipitate in a crucible. That is, we are folding the filter paper and precipitate and we are keeping it in a crucible, silica crucible or a sintered crucible. And the peculiarity of this crucible is that it can withstand very high temperature. So we are igniting the precipitate in a non-luminous flame. So that what happens is that if water or carbon dioxide are present in that particular precipitate, it will be ignited. Normally, if we are increasing the temperature gradually, what happens? The water molecules will be vaporized. CO2 will also escape from the precipitate. And also what happens to the filter paper is that usually the filter paper used is an ashless filter paper. It will be an ashless filter paper. Sometimes you might have heard of this Wattman number 40 and Wattman 41. Wattman number 40 and Wattman number 41. See here, for this incineration, we are using this Wattman 40 or 41 as the filter paper. It is an ashless filter paper. That means after burning or after igniting, the filter paper will go ashless. There will not be any remains of the filter paper left over in that particular crucible. Okay, so that is the characteristic of this Wattman filter paper. We are not at all using a normal filter paper or a normal paper. We are using a Wattman number 40 or 41 filter paper, and it is high costly also, this Wattman filter paper. The peculiarity is that it is an ashless filter paper. So we are igniting the precipitate along with the filter paper, and after a particular temperature or after 15 or 20 minutes, what happens is that the filter paper will be burnt off and there will not be any ashes remaining in that particular crucible. Okay, so the remaining, after igniting, the remaining portion will only be the precipitate. We will be obtaining the precipitate in the purest form. There will not be any water particles or impurities. The impurities present also will be ignited due to this high temperature. We are applying a very high temperature. So the impurities will also be escaping. So we will be getting the purest form of the precipitate. After that, we can after cooling, we can take the weight of the crucible along with the precipitate. Okay, so after cooling the precipitate or cooling the precipitate along with the crucible, we can take the weight of the crucible and then we can estimate the amount of ion present in that particular solution. Okay, after weight determination, we can calculate the weight of the particular ion in that particular solution. So this is the process. Sorry, here is raining. I think some noise disturbances are there. Sorry for that. So here, this drying and ignition of the precipitate, the process it is called as incineration. We are incinerating the particular sample. So here this incineration means we will be getting a stable definite composition of the precipitate. So this is the process called as incineration. Then the next is the next heading, that is the role of crucibles. I mentioned you about the crucibles, isn't it? Then the next is the role of crucibles. See, different types of crucibles we are using for taking different types of crucibles are taking for doing this incineration process. Normally, two types of crucibles are used for this gravimetric analysis. This process is called as gravimetric analysis. That means we are precipitating a particular ion, and after precipitation, what happens? First, in gravimetric analysis, first of all, we are preparing a precipitate. After doing a chemical reaction, we are preparing a precipitate, and after that, the precipitate is washed. Then it is dried and ignited. After that, it is dried and ignited, washed, then filtered, washed and dried, and then ignited, isn't it? So this process of estimation of an ion by this mechanism, it is called as gravimetric analysis. And usually in this gravimetric analysis, two types of crucibles we are using. The first one, that is the silica crucible, and the second one, that is the sintered crucible, SINTERAD. Silica crucible and sintered crucible. These are the two types of crucibles that we use for weight determination in gravimetric analysis. Okay, and also the first case, that is the crucibles made of silica or silica crucible. Silica crucible. See here, in the case of silica crucible, it is made of silica or porcelain. Silica crucible, it is made of silica or porcelain. Silica or porcelain. And also the peculiarity of the silica crucible is that it can withstand a sudden change of temperature, or it can withstand a very high temperature. It can withstand a sudden change of temperature. It can withstand a sudden change of temperature. That is the peculiarity of this silica crucible. And also they will not be easily broken while applying a high temperature, or if we are supplying a very high temperature also, it will not break easily. Okay, so it can withstand a sudden change of temperature as well as a high temperature also. And also usually it will be reacting with strong alkalis. Silica crucibles will be reacting with strong alkalis or hydrofluoric acid. So normally they will not be, these types of chemical substances will not be used with silica crucible. Won't be used in silica crucible. Okay, this should be avoided. Strong alkali or hydrofluoric acid should be avoided. So this is about silica crucible. It is made of silica or porcelain. It can withstand a sudden change of temperature, or it can withstand a high temperature. Strong alkalis or hydrofluoric acids might be avoided. Then the next category, that is the sintered crucible. Sintered crucible. See, the sintered crucibles usually, if we are using an oven for drying, then this sintered crucible can be used for drying purpose. If an oven is used, that type of precipitates we can use it in sintered crucibles. And also in the case of sintered crucible, a layer of sintered glass particle, a layer of sintered glass particle, it is used as the filtering medium. A layer of sintered glass particle is used as the filtering medium. Okay, so here this sintered crucible, it is having a layer of sintered glass particle. That means it will be powdered on the surface of this crucible, so that a layer of sintered glass particle will be acting as the filtering medium. And also this sintered crucible, it is a glass crucible. Okay, sintered crucible is a glass crucible, and usually the sintered crucible, it is made up of heat resistant glass. It is made up of heat resistant glass, and also a porous disc, and also a porous disc of sintered glass. The glass used is a heat resistant glass and also a porous disc of sintered glass. It is fused into the body of the crucible. Fused into the body of the crucible. Fused into the body of the crucible. So here this porous disc or the filter disc, it is having several types of or several different porosities. Porosities means it is acting as a filtering agent, or not agent, it is acting as a filtering medium. Okay, so this is about the sintered crucible. So normally this type of crucibles, it is used for precipitates which are oven dried, and also it will be having a layer of sintered glass particle, and this layer of sintered glass particle will be acting as the filtering medium. And also it is a glass crucible. It is made up of a heat resistant glass with a porous disc of sintered glass, and it is fused into the body of the crucible, and it is this porous disc, it is having various porosities. Okay, so this is about the role of crucibles, or the two types of crucibles, silica crucible and sintered crucible. Then the next is precautions in handling the crucible. Precautions in handling the crucible. The first point is that this crucibles, it should be exposed to a non-luminous flame. We should not be using a luminous flame. It should be exposed to a non-luminous flame. That means from the Bunsen burner. We are igniting the precipitate in a Bunsen burner. And also the compounds to be avoided, that is of lead, silver, then tin, zinc, bismuth, arsenic, antimony. These compounds should be avoided. Compounds of lead, silver, tin, zinc, bismuth, arsenic, antimony, etc. should be avoided, because if we are using these compounds, these metal compounds, what happens is that they will be reduced to their corresponding metallic state. If a compound of lead is used, we will be obtaining only lead. Okay, that means it will be converted to its metallic state, or it will be reduced to the metallic state. So what happens? Error will be occurring in the weight calculation. Okay. Then the next point is that hydroxides, nitrates, nitrites, then alkali cyanides, etc. should not be incinerated in platinum crucible. We should not use all these in platinum crucibles. Hydroxides, nitrates, nitrites, alkali, cyanides, etc. should not be used in platinum crucibles. Should not be used in platinum crucibles. Okay. And also this crucibles, it should be there should not be any scratches in the crucible. We have to keep it safe. It should be prevented from scratches. And also a bright surface should be maintained in the crucible. That is, after doing a particular reaction or after precipitation, we have to clean it thoroughly, free of scratches. And the crucibles, we should maintain a bright surface in the crucible. Should maintain a bright surface in the crucible. Okay. So this is all about the gravimetric analysis or the precipitation. Then the remaining topic, that is the remaining is the chromatography. Okay, that we will discuss in our next session. So after this chromatography, the chapter analytical principles will be over. Okay, so in the next class we will be discussing chromatography. All of you should write the lecture notes and upload it. Okay, thank you.